Welcome to the Professor Nick Show. I'm joined by a special guest today. He's a friend and he owns a local business called Surfaces USA. This is Lawrence Joss. So we're coming at you from Ventura College. We got video, we got audio, and Lawrence has a really interesting story, and I want to try and capture that so we can maybe learn from it and apply it to our own lives. So let's get started. First, it seems like you've got your hands in a lot of things. So do you want to just, first tell us about Surfaces USA, or tell us a little bit about everything you're doing, or?
I think a great place to start is, a little bit more at the beginning, right? Like, first generation immigrant, came from South Africa. And, my dad was always a businessman, and my grandfather, and, as a kid, like, that was just kind of like second nature. I was in sixth grade and bringing candy bars to school and selling candy bars. And then when I was in eighth grade, I was hiring people at the school to sell candy bars for me and going to like Costco or wherever and bringing big cases of candy and filling up my locker when we still had lockers. I don't know if anyone has lockers anymore.
I don't know either. I had locker.
Did you? Right, so you can relate. And then I'd hire a bunch of kids to sell candy until we all got busted, and then it just kept progressing. My dad was in the restaurant business, so I worked in the restaurant business for a while, and then he got into the tile industry, and so at 15 years old, I started hanging out at the tile store,
Yeah.
and started learning everything: how to drive a forklift, how to load material, what material to load, what material went with what, and being an entrepreneur, I'd say, like, even at the young age, like, I just wanted information. I just wanted to understand how everything worked.
Sure.
So I'd hang out with all the old-time salespeople, which they seemed really old to me. It was probably from 30 to 60, and I just learned what they did, and then I just take what they did and figure out what worked for me, and that's really where it really started, when I was young. But that actually, when I got a little bit older, it's just a place that I kind of like hung out and got to know people.
Yeah. So is this something, as you grew into it, did you enjoy it, or was this just kind of the family business and you were good at it and it was convenience, not the right word? I guess my curiosity, my question is, did you get interested in it? Is this something that you became passionate about?
And it's an interesting question with an evolution. And at an early age, it was more like a game, right? It's like playing Monopoly. Like, I got something that maybe someone wants, and how do I get the most out of them, and how do I get them to buy it the quickest possible?
Yeah.
Right? So that was the game, and what language was used, and how I was able to get from point A to point B, and it's just trying different things, so, yeah.
Okay. So from that standpoint, it was interesting. You were a kid figuring something out.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun, and then, it was a big deal to do a sale, and it was a big deal in the beginning to do a smaller sale, and it was a big deal to do a middle-sized sale, and part of being an entrepreneur for me is like, you talk to a lot of people that are selling stuff, and they don't necessarily care about what they're selling.
Yeah.
The difference that I've experienced in my life is, as an entrepreneur, like, if I don't sell something, I'm going to die. There's no like in between. It's like, I'm going to sell something, and it feels like that. It feels like this has to happen. And you get so looped into that, and the dopamine rush and everything with that, and you keep chasing that, and it doesn't matter what it is, you just need to sell something.
Those are the words of a true salesman right there. And I appreciate that. And so, a total random side story, I just thought of this as you were speaking. My wife and I went out on a date on Sunday for the first time in a long time, because there's a baby at the house who's 10 months old, and we don't get out much with the baby. So we went to a little brunch restaurant in Carpinteria, and we walked in, and we had never been there before, and I asked the man that was seating us, I was like, hey, this is our first time, and this is just me being inquisitive, especially because I take food very seriously. What do you recommend? What do people go crazy for? And the guy says, well, actually, you're asking the right person, because I'm an owner and I love the food here. And so let me tell you that we've got the best hash in town. We've got the best biscuits and gravy in town, and so on and so on. He must have talked with us for 5 to 7 minutes. And he's like, I'm sorry if I overwhelmed you. And my thought was, no, this is literally exactly what I was looking for in this situation. And one of my pet peeves is when you go into a restaurant and you ask the same question and the server or the cashier, whoever it is, says, I don't know, I don't really eat here. Like, well, that doesn't help me out. That's not good service. Good service is being passionate about what you sell, and turning it into a game, and providing that level of service and care that the people on the other side of the transaction value. So, side tangent story. Sorry.
Yeah, and that brings up a really interesting point, is that when I'm selling something, you're not buying the something that I'm selling, right? Like, people like me, they want to buy from me. I know what I'm talking about. I offer a trade in value for what I'm giving them. And so many salespeople think that I'm selling a widget, and I'm selling a car, I'm selling a piece of carpet, I'm selling a piece of tile. And it's really about me coming as a full person to the conversation, and they're buying what I have to offer because they like me. And that's the difference between a good salesperson and someone that's trying to sell something. Sure. And a good entrepreneur and someone that's just trying to be in business. Yeah. Like, it's really that same owner that spent 7 minutes with you. You liked him, it sounds like.
Absolutely. I can't wait to go back. I mean, it might be another 10 months, but we'll go back.
Right? Yeah. And you're going to go back because you enjoyed him. You enjoyed the experience that he provided. And the food might have been the best food ever, and it might have been mediocre, but it definitely tasted better because of the service you got.
And the way he sold it and presented it, and the passion and the love and the care that was in it. And, I visited you in the shop plenty of times, and I can see that. I can see that there's true care and passion about what you do. And, in the past, when I've been in business for myself, I always felt like people were purchasing me, not the services that I offer, but they were purchasing my personality and my drive and my interest and my ability to give them good customer service and the experience and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a really important part of the process of selling is the authenticity, right? Yeah. Like, people can tell, like, if you're selling something, or if you're really authentically there and you're showing up, and they can either buy something or not buy something. But generally, by being authentic and being able to attune to people, you create this whole other layer where people, and then you see the shoulders go down, you see them take a breath, and you're like, okay, now we're in community together. Yeah. And maybe we do something and maybe we don't, and we're in community together. Yeah. I got a 98% better chance of selling you something if we get to that point.
Completely agree with you, 100%. So you got started in the business because it was the family business. At some point, you decided to grow and expand. Is that right? Did you fall into expansion, or was it something that you specifically decided, okay, it is time to grow as a person, grow my business, and see how far we can take this?
It's a great question. And I think I was 21 when I started my business, maybe 22. I was working with my mom and dad and working for them, and my dad's type A personality, and I'm not necessarily that. And I think I just got married or was engaged and decided I was going to move to Arizona and open up a tile store and do my gig. And then we had a big earthquake in 94.
Yeah, I was here for that.
Right. So in 94, 2 weeks after we had the earthquake, I went and leased a building across the road from the biggest tile store in the San Fernando Valley. And I got a hammer and nails and built out a store and started selling stuff. And by that time, I'd met different vendors and knew different people, and was able to take advantage of those relationships again, right? Because the sales cycle, where people really get confused in the sales cycle, they think the sales cycle ends when you sell a piece of tile or a piece of carpet to the customer. But it doesn't work like that. Like, my sales cycle is my vendor. I'm selling to them when I'm buying something from them. Again, I need to get good terms. I want to get good pricing. I want to make sure I get a bunch of freebies if I can. So the sales cycle is not one direction, and it's not linear. So for me, the sales cycle started long before I was in business, while I was building relationships. Yeah. And then I opened up a store in North Hollywood on Sherman Way and Woodman, and started doing great. And then an opportunity came in San Diego to take a distributorship up, and I opened in San Diego. I lived 2 weeks in the Valley, 2 weeks in San Diego, toting around our 6-month-old, that went on for like a year. And then every single person I met turned into an opportunity for a relationship. And then I took over a Brazilian company in the San Fernando Valley, And then I just kept expanding. Like my young model was, I'm going to have 300 stores and be the biggest, best monopoly player in the world. You know, that was the early idea.
And when did you venture out here to Oxnard?
So I ventured out to Oxnard. We've had the store out here for about 23 years. And I wanted to open up here. And at that time, like this entrepreneurship thing, the next layer was property, right? And some of my mentors, you know, spoke about the business. And the business is a great thing, but on longevity and long term, you really want to own where you sell.
Sure.
Because that becomes your retirement. So Oxnard actually is the first building that I purchased.
Okay.
And that's why I opened where I did.
Okay. Because you got a good deal, or because you were invested in the property that you bought?
I was invested in the property, and I, you know, built it out, made an incredible showroom and stuff. And my parents actually came to work for me, and they ran that store for 10 or 12 years.
Gotcha. So at the peak of the powers, how many locations were there?
We had 7 or 8 locations, and mostly just Southern California. I tried opening up in Arizona,
yeah.
And that was a disaster. It was way too far, too hard to control.
Yeah.
Different people, that one-on-one direct personal relationship couldn't be maintained because there wasn't enough time spent together.
Yeah.
So that was a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then not to mention, you spend a lot of your time on the road, right? Part of your full-time job is I'm constantly traveling. I never see my family. I'm never in the same place for more than a few days. And maybe we're different, but for me, that just wouldn't work. So
yeah, my business wasn't necessarily like that. When I was going back and forth to San Diego, my family would always be with me. When I worked out here, yeah, I'd be gone, you know, 6 days a week, but I'd always have dinner with the family. I'd always still be in the same location. I didn't necessarily do a lot of that traveling because everything was really close. And I'm a great entrepreneur, but I'm not a great manager. So even though I had several locations, I'd lose grasp of all those different locations because I didn't necessarily have all the skill sets that I needed to maintain those locations in a more in a healthier way.
Gotcha. Okay. So then that has led to change. Change is the one constant, right? So you grow to 7 or 8 locations. You attempt to do something in Arizona. You're back here you're in San Diego. You're in Oxnard. You're in North Hollywood. You're in the Valley. Something changed at some point, which made you want to go from expanding to contracting a little bit, right? So I guess that's my next question is, where are you now currently versus where you were 25 years ago in your own mindset, not from a business standpoint, but in your own mindset, and what has led to some of the recent changes that you have made for the business?
It's a great question, and the evolution was I want 300 stores to, wow, 8 stores are going to kill me. You know, I mean, you lose control of those personal relationships, and you can't maintain 70 or 80 people over several different stores where you don't get to spend time. So at a point, a lot of the stores became baggage because there was no real reason to have them. I always thought by having more, you have more. And as I matured a little bit, fewer stores, smaller footprint, less overhead, actually more value and more profits.
Yeah.
So what I thought was real when I was younger was really just my ego. And as I started to grow up and, you know, run into a couple 2x4s and get knocked down a couple times and get up, and, you know, you just learn to behave differently and to show up differently. And, you know, for me, there was a huge growth from the time I was about, 36. So we're talking 13 years into my business where I started to grow emotionally and spiritually and mentally, and the things that were important on day one, which was to make as much money as possible, to keep as much money as I can make for myself, became like, oh wow, I want community. How do I share what's happening with my employees? How do I share this on all different layers? And one of my mentors always used to talk about transparency to me, and he'd talk about transparency, and he said, when you're at work, when you're at home, when you're walking the dog, like to be the same person, what does that look like? And if you're in business and you're just driving for the money and just trying to get as much as you can, You can't be that loving, kind, humble person at home. Like those two personalities have to eventually come together, or you fall apart.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me. I decided that I wanted to be a different kind of person. I wanted to have a more holistic business and start to give back to community and build community in a different, more meaningful way. And it took me until I was 36 to start that process.
Yeah. It starts to change after time, doesn't it?
It does. And the habitual coping mechanisms and even running business was based on what I learned from my father. And at a time, you start to question who does this serve, and where does this idea even come from? Is this really what business is? Yeah. And who decided that? Yeah. And we live in such a great place where there's so many people doing so many different things within business and different aspects to their business that are more, again, earth-based and holistic based, and you get to grow a business in a different kind of way and as a person in a different kind of way. So that's really what evolution's been for me.
Interesting. I love it. I was just in front of students yesterday in my intro to business class, suggesting to them that the most successful people out there are the ones that love what they do and enjoy their life, not just the people chasing more money. Granted, money can buy you lots of things, but it seems to me at this stage in my life, and it sounds like you and I are similar in thinking this, that there are other things aside from just accumulating as much money as possible that can make one happy. Sure, along the way, making some good money is nice. But if you go to work and love what you do and like the people around you, then I think that there is more value in that than just racking up a big bank account. So,
100%. And I'd add to that developing yourself as a full person. So many times we get focused on, I'm just a salesperson, or I'm just paying the bills, or I'm just the money earner in the house, or I'm just the guy that mows the lawn, or I'm just the lady that does this, or I'm just the folks that do this. You know what I mean? When I started really developing myself as a full person, I bring so much more to the table. Like there's so much more value in what I bring to the table today than there was 20 years ago, and I can achieve so much more, much quicker, in a much more profitable way, financially and holistically.
Okay.
So really that development of a full person, I think is really, really important.
So let's stay on this subject a little bit. At least I think that's where we're going with this. One of my next questions for you is, what is it that you know now that you wish you would have known then? And by then, I mean back when you first got started in this business.
On like an organizational and operational level, I wish I would have had more tools in my belt. Like when we talk about college and stuff, I went to college, I dropped out of college after a year. I didn't necessarily have certain tools, right? So I would have liked to spend a little bit more time doing that. I would have really liked to have honed my listening skills. Like listening's really taken a while to figure that out, but it's the most important thing that I do as a salesperson is listen. Like no one needs to hear about my dog or my shoes or anything like that. I really need to know about people in order to create some kind of connection.
Yeah.
So listening's been really important. And what else do I know? I know that that as individuals, we're all really, really different, and we come to work every day and we have different needs, and we have different impact zones in our life. Like someone that's coming to work might not have the bandwidth to be able to add something else onto their plate. Like that, I thought because I'm privileged, and because I'm running around in the body that I'm running around in, I've never really thought about other people not necessarily having the same privilege that I have, and they're just trying to pay the bills and just get by. I didn't see that. I thought we all had the same opportunities, and it's just not true.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we're gonna record a follow-up podcast to this, which is gonna be much more specific to the industry that you're in, because I know that you have a lot of information that you've acquired over the years, and a lot of enthusiasm and interest in that industry, in the stone and tile industry. So we're gonna record a follow-up podcast to this one. But before we do that, as we start signing out on this particular episode, I've got, potentially dozens of students watching and listening that are 18, 19, that are just starting their journeys in business. Do you have any final words of wisdom for that audience? Say I run this podcast as part of a lesson that I teach about entrepreneurship. And I have, in a class of 30, say 5 of those students or 10 of those students are either starting a business currently or are looking to start a business in the next year or two. What words of wisdom can you share with those folks?
Again, the most important thing that I'd share is listen. Listen to whoever you're talking to and build authentic relationships. A tendency when I was younger is it's a very narcissistic relationship that I used to build, where I was always trying to get something. I was always trying to get something from someone else. I needed to grow my business. I needed to pay my bills. I needed to do this stuff. And once I got beyond that, I was able to build lasting relationships that as an entrepreneur in business that's going to be in business 20, 30 years, like I can turn back to a relationship from 20 years ago, and the person's going to pick up the telephone and have a conversation with me and offer me information or not offer me information. But because I'm building a different kind of relationship, it's really important to listen, to ask questions about the other person. And I would say the greatest thing that I would say after listening for an entrepreneur, if you really, really want to be successful, is not knowing. Is not knowing what the answer is. It leaves a space for creativity. It leaves a space for the end sale, the end goal to change. When you come in with a fixed idea, you're stuck before you start. You know what I mean? And if you're really listening, you're going to get all the information in that first 5 minutes of the conversation with the person, and you're going to have an opportunity to be creative with the opportunity, as long as you don't think you know everything. And generationally, I see the generation older than us, they think they know everything. And I'm pretty old, but my dad's generation, they know too much. And then knowing too much limits everything that they're able to do. And if you see the really cool people that are doing really creative stuff with apps, with e-commerce, with all these different things, it's creativity that's taken their business somewhere that the previous generation couldn't get. So listening, asking a lot of questions, and not knowing. I'd say those would be the 3 best things I'd suggest.
I think those are words of wisdom, and I appreciate hearing that from you, and I know that everybody watching and listening does as well. So for Lawrence, I'm Nick, and we're signing off this time around. Thank you for being here. We'll record part 2 here very shortly, so stay tuned, everyone.
It was a blast. Thanks, everyone.